So you may have noticed in the last video that everything we did ended up plus plus in the parentheses, right? Because we had a positive b and we had a positive c. So let's look at how that changes when we have a b that is negative. So again, you're going to want to do these on paper for extra practice because it'll be hard to type into the computer. So when we look at this first trinomial here, x squared minus 10x plus 9, we first notice that our b is no longer positive. It is negative 10. Remember, we've talked at length throughout this year that a minus sign and a negative sign are the same. So subtracting something is the same as adding the negative. So we're going to put at the top our positive 9, and now I'm going to start inputting signs. I should have done this in the last video, but it's fine. And then a negative 10. So if I want to multiply to be a positive 9 and add to be a negative 10, then we are going to look at our factors of 9. So we have 1 times 9 and 3 times 3. So 1 plus 9 gives me 10, but I need a negative 10. So if you think back to the beginning of the last video where I said if the signs are the same, they multiply to be a positive, that would help you because if we put in 1 times 9, that gives me positive 9, but also positive 10. So I need to make them both negative because a negative 1 times a negative 9 is positive 9, and negative 1 plus negative 9 is negative 10. So when I go into my parentheses, I'm going to have x minus 1 and x minus 9. Checking it back, I see that x times x is x squared. X times negative 9 is negative 9x. Negative 1 times x is negative 1x. And negative 1 times negative 9 is positive 9. Combining these, I get x squared minus 10x plus 9, which is what I started with, so I know that this is my final answer. These ones in particular always trip students up because we forget that a negative times a negative is a positive, and that a negative plus a negative is still a deeper negative. It's like owing $1 and then owing $9, you're now owing $10. So let's take a look at this next example. We see that A is 1, B is negative 11, and C is positive 10. So we're going to put a positive 10 up here and a negative 11 down here. Notice when I put it into my X puzzle, I don't actually worry about the X's. Those are taken care of in our shell. Now we look at our factors of 10. So we have 1 times 10 and 2 times 5. Well, 2 and 5 make 7, so we know they're not there. So we know it's got to be 1 and 10. If they're both positive, then positive 1 times positive 10 gives me positive 10. But positive 1 plus positive 10 gives me a positive 11 instead of a negative. So we're just going to change those up. It's going to be a negative 1 and a negative 10. Because negative 1 times negative 10 is positive 10. Negative 1 plus negative 10 is negative 11. Putting into our parentheses, we get x minus 1 times x minus 10. You also could write x plus negative 1 if you wanted to, and x plus negative 10. That wouldn't be wrong. It's just not the way we like to see it. Checking it back, we see we have x times x is x squared. X times negative 10 is negative 10x. Negative 1 times x is negative 1x. And negative 1 times negative 10 is positive 10. Combining our middle terms, we get x squared minus 11x plus 10, which is what we started with, so we know we have done it correctly. So now let's go on to our last one. At the top for C, we're going to put in positive 24. And at the bottom for B, we're going to put in negative 14. Factors of 24 are 1 times 24, 2 times 12, 3 times 8, 4 times 6. So now we're looking through our list, what will give us 14? And we know that 1 and 24 is 25, 2 and 12 is 14. There it is. 3 and 8 would give you 11, and 4 and 6 would give you 10. So we know that we'll have 2 and 12. but positive 2 times positive 12 gives me positive 24, but also positive 14. So it needs to be negative 2 and negative 12. So x minus 2 times x minus 12. Checking it back, x times x is x squared. X times negative 12 is negative 12x. Negative 2 times x is negative 2x. And negative 2 times negative 12 is negative 14. Right in the middle, we get x squared minus 14x minus 14. Oh, I cannot multiply. Or, so we know that that is what we started with. So that is our final answer. One other thing you can think about is if your C value is positive, then you will always be adding your terms together. Next week, we'll look at what happens when C is not positive and see how it changes up a little bit. But for this unit, or for this week, we're just focusing with a positive C. So we're finding terms that add to give us B. You try the next three. All right, so taking a look, x minus 5 times x minus 8 for this one. The next one was x minus 7 times x minus 8, and then x minus 2 times x minus 3. Again, remembering we had a positive 40 and a negative 13, which gives us negative 5 and negative 8. We had a positive 56 and a negative 15, which gave us a negative 8 and negative 7. And then finally a positive 6 and negative 5, which is negative 3 and negative 2. It's very important to make sure you watch your signs, see what sign C is, see what sign B is, and make sure you're carefully paying attention to those signs. All right, now finish out these last 6 before we get back together for a quick recap. All right, take a couple seconds, check these answers. Remember, again, the factors can be in any order. They are commutative, as long as they're going to multiply out to give you the top answer. Remember, you can always check your work to make sure you're doing these correctly. So, to recap, we want to remember that we want to find, and I'm just going to scroll up to the page that I wanted you to be at, or that we want to recap from. This piece right here. You want to find two numbers that will multiply to be C and then add to be B. Make sure you're watching your signs. If C is positive, then your signs in the parentheses will always be the same. If your B is positive, then the signs will be positive. If the B is negative, then the signs will be negative. But the key to remember is if C, whatever sign C has, tells you, are your signs going to be the same or are they going to be different? And for all of these this week, the signs will be the same and the B value will tell you what that sign will be. Positive B means you're going to have plus plus. Negative B means you're going to have minus minus. This week, it's important to make sure you're practicing because the practice on this is key. So head over to Canvas and get your practice done.